National Fire Radio.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of The Size Up by National Fire Radio. Every episode's goal is to introduce you, our listeners, to concepts, ideas, theories, and wisdom from our unique guests. We call this a lifestyle podcast, but don't think we're only going to talk about one specific lifestyle here. Family, fashion, music, fitness, food, health, wellness, beverage, and sports all intersect in our lives in different ways. They all culminate to making us, us, and causing us to ask the question to ourselves, what's your size up? So sit back, listen in, and take notes on this episode's knowledge bombs. Now, a quick word from our sponsors. Listen up. Our friends at Mercedes Textiles want to know, how often do you check your equipment? Probably every shift, right? But this month, they aren't just talking about the hose on your engine. Even if they have been a fire hose manufacturer for over 45 years, because that hose is not the only hose you should be doing daily checks on. April is Testicular Cancer Awareness Month. So we here at the Size Up by National Fire Radio and Mercedes want to remind you to check your equipment. Because just like water on the fire, when it comes to cancer, response time matters. Early detection saves lives. This month, Mercedes is supporting Detect Together, a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating first responders on early cancer detection. Because if found early, the survival rate of testicular cancer skyrockets to 99%. I'd say that makes it worth checking your equipment regularly. So go to responsetimematters.org to learn how to check yourself and request your free Firehouse Education Kit. Thanks in part to Mercedes Textiles.
Taylor's Tins. Taylor and his crew from Taylor's Tins have been manufacturing metal helmet fronts since 2017. With over 200,000 metal fronts in the market, they are a leader in the metal helmet front space. Their creativity as well as customer service sets them apart from the competition. They are manufacturing one-offs within 24 to 48 hours to ship to your door. Not only that, but head over to taylorstins.com and you'll see all the other products that they offer. Right now on their homepage, they have a whole page dedicated to vintage metal prints. It's so cool to see the original prints of the fire apparatus, fire hydrants, fire helmets, fire boots, flashlights. It's so cool. They are printed metal tins that hang on the wall that are aged and look to be from the original days of when these prints were drawn, looking for copyright and trademarks. It's really cool. Taylor and his crew are super creative. They're always pushing the envelope as to what products they offer to the fire service. Check them out at www.taylorstins.com. That's again, taylorstins.com to get a hold of Taylor and his crew. And in the words of Taylor, stop burning up leather.
All right, everybody, welcome back to lucky number episode 13 here of The Size Up by National Fire Radio. But with my guest today, if I add all of my immense podcast experience to his number of podcasts that he's recorded, we're at like 768 or 769. I don't know if maybe one release that I've missed recently, but I am beyond honored to have my friend from a long, long time ago. I even went back and looked. I was on his podcast in 2017 twice. I got to do a part 2. I don't know if I was the first part 2, but my good buddy James Geering from the Behind the Shield podcast, man. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you. Firstly, 13 is my mum's lucky number. So anytime anything good happens, she's like, oh, it's 13. And she works out a mathematical equation that equals 13. Like, well, there was 3 eggs in that basket and there was 10 people in that car, so it's 13, so it's lucky. So it's funny that I can tell my mum I was on number 13.
Such a win.
I think you came on, I think you were the second episode that I did. And then I think we did 3 in the end, didn't we? You did another one later.
I think I came into another one maybe like a year or 2 later there. I know I tried. So I have never asked anyone to be on their podcast before. I can honestly admit that, except for one person. And it was James, because when I saw his numbers were creeping up, I was like, bro, could I be on 555? And he had already recorded it. He was up to like 562. I was too late to get on that number.
It would have been good though.
It would have been. We tried. It was like dumb fireman in me that made it so late. But so it's been a while since we've connected, and the podcast is up to, like I said, 755. Is that the number now?
Yeah, I think, yeah, 7:55. I'm about to put 56 out later today.
Which I mean, it's 2016. You're like a podcasting OG. So let's jump back to that 2016. I kind of know the backstory to it all because I was not there for the first episode, but I've heard it from you and we've talked a lot about it. But what made you want to do the podcast to begin with?
I wish I could give you this amazing uplifting story about how I had this rebirth, and then I was like, all right, well, now I'm going to crush it, and I'm going to take black and white video and cover Instagram and inspire people and take ice baths, but it's not any of that.
But you do take ice baths, right? Do you take ice baths?
No, I don't, actually. It's one of the things that I don't. I have dabbled a little bit. I had Wim Hof on the show. I'm like, okay, I've got to do some of that stuff before I get him on. But for some reason, I don't get the same thing out of it that a lot of people do. Like, I made myself do it a bunch of times, and then I've swam in. Maybe what it might be actually is growing up in England, our oceans are so cold. When I used to lifeguard in London, I had to do training in like 46-degree weather. So maybe I had so much cold weather when I was younger. I'm a little bit like, yeah, about that whole ice bath.
I think I'm good.
Enjoying. I mean, I like a hot bath. I like a hot shower. So, but it is one of the things that I keep kind of circling around and trying again and again and again. But so many people have a great experience with that specifically. But
it's definitely the hippest Instagram fitness trend at the moment. I know for me personally, when I was marathon training, like after super long runs, like 20 plus miles, the ice bath helped. Anything other than that, it really wasn't worth my while to get in the cold water for any amount of time there.
Well, I mean, it's so beneficial, but what do people do in Mexico and South Africa and all these other places where there just isn't a lot of cold? Like the evolutionary element, I get the stress, but cold specifically is other ways of stressing. And I would argue, and I've talked about this on here before, if you do a lot of training in the heat, which we do in Florida, that's also stress. You know what I mean? So there's other ways that you can stress your body, but I think the cold bath, I mean, I see so many people doing it. But I kind of chuckle because there used to be that phrase, if a tree falls in a forest and no one sees it, did it really fall? And now it's like, if an ice bath happened and no one filmed it, did it really happen?
It's not there. If you didn't post it on Instagram, it's definitely more important than a CrossFit workout. Like, your CrossFit workout can happen if you didn't post it on social media, but your ice bath, definitely, you didn't get the benefits from it.
Exactly. But circling around to the origin story, so kind of that tongue-in-cheek kind of tangent there. It really came from 6 funerals. That's the sobering, true origin story. So I was about 10 years into my career. I had worked in 3 departments by that time. I started in the Miami area, went to California for a few years, and I'd come back to the Orlando area. And in 2 years, I buried 6 of my friends. And it wasn't one thing. It was everything from cancer. We had a guy in his young 20s, early 20s, we died of cancer, Carl. Heart disease, overdose, suicide. I mean, all these things that we see to this day. But I have a background as an athlete, as a coach, as an exercise physiology major. So I knew enough to know what should be being brought to us and what wasn't being brought to us. So that was really it. And initially I started looking, and I just didn't find, back then, 6.5 years ago, a fire podcast that was really talking about the person in the uniform.
Yes.
We had leadership thing, we had tactics, we had operations, we had, what's in your pocket, all that kind of stuff, but nothing as far as the person. And so when, they say, well, if you can't find it, that's your sign to do it yourself. That was kind of it. So I was still on shift for the first 2.5 years, and then transitioned out about 4 years ago to focus on this full time, because I really realized that it was ultimately having more of an effect than running one call at a time. So 14 years into my career is when I transitioned out and kind of took the leap of faith.
Which is so amazing too, because, I know I've said this before too, but, we're helpers, right? That's why we took this career path, this job, if you're volunteering to do it, whatever you're doing. And for you to be able to see the benefit of how many more people you're helping via the podcast and what it is you're doing versus the folks that you're helping on a call directly is just an amazing thing. And I can't commend you enough for it. I remember when you had told me you were thinking about doing it and leaving, and I was like, maybe you should think about this some more. Like, just don't just make sure you really want to do this, right? But it's unreal how many people you've reached and how many different topics you broached. And you're 100% right that in 2016, I feel like that was the start of kind of a change year or like era, even though we're still changing. But things have advanced a lot since then, correct?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that was really for a lot of us that there have been people in every single area that I talk about. There have been people in that area for a long, long time, like the mental health, Tanya Glenn, Dan DeGrice. Some of these people have been talking about this for a long, long time. But I think for most of us that found ourselves kind of grabbing a topic and running with it was probably about, 8 or so years ago. There was a kind of paradigm shift and people were talking about mental health all of a sudden. And even the kind of the decon conversation, whether there's, the clean cab or whatever people's interpretation of it, we started getting not just, oh, it's so sad that we die, but actually there's solutions for this now. So I think that was pretty cool being part of the renaissance as a bunch of people, whether they're writing books or guests on podcasts or starting podcasts or speaking at conferences, but it shifted to, we're going to talk about standpipe operations again, to let's talk about mental health. Let's talk about suicide. So when I went to the Orlando Fire Conference the first time, which I forget how many years ago now, that was it. They'd lost Steve Negley and it was a complete shift. So it was all around that same time. Chief Dangerfield was the one that took his own life here in Florida and then did the Facebook post that kind of went viral as well. So, it was just all those things coming together at the same time. And you had 555 going. I mean, there was just, to me, I wasn't at all the conferences. I didn't feel like I really had my finger on the pulse of the American Fire Service. I was having my own siloed experience in all the different departments I work for. But that was when I kind of peered over the wall and saw all the people that were really trying to make a difference in our profession over and above the things we already do wearing the uniform.
And it's so amazing how you said that peered over the wall from your department, right? Because I work in a department, obviously, and there's some times where you think you're the only department that acts that way. And then when you peer over that wall, and I just don't mean take a look, when you're actually out there and hearing it and talking to people and meeting the people and getting their experience, you see so much more of the same things. You see positives in your department, you see negatives in your department, you see things you're doing right, things you're doing wrong. And when it comes to this conversation that I think we're probably going to focus us on the most today is that, like you said, that behind the shield, like the person wearing the shield. I mean, I know I've learned so much. We started 555. It'll be 10 years ago this month, the end of this month, April 29th, Larry started it. It's my dad's birthday, which is weirdness, just like you said about your mom in episode 13. Like you have those connections, right? But we started this thing and we were just two like lunkhead firefighters that like to work out. And I remember talking to you early about sleep deprivation and being like, I'm not sleep deprived. What are you talking about? You're crazy. And here I am realizing shortly after that, the different person I am after the shift that I just worked. And I know early on for the podcast, that was one of your probably biggest focuses in the beginning was getting that shift work changed. And where do you think we're at with that? Because I know, we talk about different shifts and I am blessed. I work the 24/72 and did not know much about the 24/48 until I really met you and some other 555 folks. But where do you see that conversation going now as opposed to 2016, let's say?
I am enthused by the fact that sleep is acknowledged and mentioned a lot more. I mean, whether it's, people like myself that were in the fire service, whether it's people like Andrew Huberman and some of these other people that are putting it out through different lenses, I think that understanding is starting to go out there. However, I just had a great conversation with one of the basically the wellness guru in South Metro, and so ahead of the curve on so many different areas, still haven't addressed the shifts yet. They do 4896s. Insanity. So
I agree with you. 4896 to me sounds insanity. However, in talking to people out there, when they switch from 24/48 to 4896, their lives become incrementally better. So if those are your only two options, because you're not going to put on a fourth shift, unfortunately, it's the economics of that just aren't always going to work. Is that a better option? Is it a worse option? You're more into this than I am, so you tell me.
Well, so here's the problem. It's exactly what you just said is the issue. And this is the knee jerk, because from the probie all the way up to the chief, this is the way we've been indoctrinated since the beginning. So there's a phrase that I always butcher, but it's something like, plant the seed of a tree under which the shade you'll never know. Meaning, investing in your people, you may not get that Christmas bonus for that budget year being the chief operating, the chief financial officer or the county commissioner or whatever. But actually, financially, if you look at how much it costs to destroy the firefighters the way we do at the moment, it would actually save you hand over fist. You think about, I mean, you probably don't see it as much because you're working 24/72, which I think should be an industry standard. I'm all about 24s. I can't imagine going to work and in 12 hours leaving. I just done with my checkouts and training and workout by that point, So it would be, I think we have to do the 24s. We already have buildings we can sleep in, even though sleep, I'm doing, abbreviations, air quotes. But the problem is, so you have the workman's comp claims, the injuries, you have the mental health issues, people go into addiction centers, you have the medical disability, you have medical retirements, you have the line of duty deaths, you have the lawsuits from when we make a mistake. You look at that giant like waterfall of wasted money, and you take just some of that and you invest it in a D shift, which is what you guys have already. This is what's so crazy too. Everyone reveres the Northeast, yet no one wants to actually copy the way they work. We would actually save money hand over fist for our cities and our counties, maybe reopen some of these fucking browned out stations and closed down stations. But we're so short-sighted and blinkered that at the moment it's normalized to make yourself look like a rock star in a budget year. And we can't think like that. One thing that used to nauseate me is that people say, oh, the fire service is like a business. Like, I couldn't disagree more. However, if you want to look at it like a business, beautiful. Look at it like Google. Look at it like Virgin. Look at it like these companies that invest in their people that are hugely successful because they put their people first. And we do the polar opposite. We model it like some shitty pyramid scheme, where people will be here for a year and then they're gone, So this is the problem I have. The 24/72 should be the conversation. I don't know if I told you this in one of our conversations before, but the analogy I use for people, I'll give you two analogies. The first one is the actual conversation with the work week. We talk about 24/48 or 48/96, or let's come instead of 7 a.m., let's come in at 7 p.m. It's a Rubik's Cube and you're spinning it and the colors are different, but the cubes are still the same size.
Yeah, not make that
we
change.
Need to talk about making that whole cube smaller, which is what you guys have done. The other thing that I did, which, again, 8 years ago, I was thinking the same as everyone else until I had an aha moment, listening to someone else's podcast. But I did a video, I don't know, about 2 months ago now to illustrate why we're our own worst enemy and actually fighting for these work weeks that will give us the rest and recovery for us to actually thrive. And so I took 3 poker chips and I laid out 10. And I said, this is what we talk about. We say 1 day on, 2 days off, or we say, oh, we only work 10 days a month. And this is the 56-hour a week firefighter. But if you hold that poker chip, that pile of poker chips, there's 3 chips, because a 24 isn't 1 day. 24 is 3 civilian work days crammed together, 9 hours with a 1 hour lunch, so 8 hours. So we work 3 days on, or we work 30 days a month. Doesn't sound so amazing then. Now you guys work less, which is my point. Is that's what our 56 hours firefighters are working. Now we also have a staffing shortage because I think the people are actually, in this internet age, starting to understand this is the cost of being a firefighter.
For sure.
And even though your call to service is amazing and I adore this profession, which is why I'm still advocating for it, even though I'm not wearing the uniform anymore, I think a lot of our younger people, the pool is getting a little smaller for the people that are able to do the job physically, mentally, but also they're researching. They're going, all these hours for this little pay. And I know now, because I'm a young person, being raised in this environment, that I know sleep deprivation is terrible. And look at these marriages and these divorces and everything. And I think they're weighing it up too. So you've got these 56-hour firefighters, and now you've got a staffing shortage. So now where I live, where I volunteered for a very short time, they periodically, like every couple of weeks, are getting a mandatory. So now you're looking at an 80-hour work week. So you think about, again, the cost of these, even more fatigue, and it's growing and growing and growing. This county just had 2 suicides within 3 weeks of each other. Their 6th suicide in 4 years, and they are not a big county. We're a very rural area. So this is why I'm so passionate about this conversation with the shifts. If we actually just take a step back and go, why is the person that bags my groceries or, gives me my bread at the bakery topping out at 40 hours, but Pip or James, who gets toned out at 3 a.m., gets into a rig, then has to make entry and do a primary search, then maybe come out, doff their gear, and then start working the pediatric code, you're fine with them working 56 plus hours a week, being awake every third day. So we have just become so indoctrinated and believe in our own mythology that we're not understanding it to then get angry about it, to then fight for it. So every time the unions come around, oh, we're going to fight for more money. Well, how about we don't? How about this time we fight for more people? Because that in turn is going to give us a much better quality of life. And then, then maybe you'll have the clear thinking and the clear mind to start being an entrepreneur and doing something that you love on the side, that then ultimately one day might be something that you transition to when you're ready to leave the fire service.
It's a total different way to look at this. And they're definitely, I know, my father is going to listen to this and yell at me because I'm going to get it wrong. But I'm fairly certain it was the early 60s that we went from like a 3-platoon system to a 4-platoon system. And that has been how it's been. When I started, I did 10s and 14s. We didn't do the 24s. And then we got those. And now we've been able to prove to our administrators that as long as we have the appropriate amount of staffing on each shift, we can function as a very effective fire department. And that's a big thing where you can't run a department without enough people because you're just going to wear your people out. And I think that's one of the things, like you said in there, that we're seeing on top of the sleep deprivation, on top of the physical toll. Currently I have 2 firefighters right now that were injured at firefighters or injured at fires. Those things happen. Our job is dangerous. We're going to lose someone. Like one firefighter had a hernia. He's not going to be at work. He can't come to work. Even if he comes to work on light duty, he's not really helping us in a way when we need him to.
Let me interject in that because that's a very important point to underline as well. You are all about the fitness side. I'm all about the fitness side. John Spiro talks about, would you want you rescuing you? I always say, how would you feel if your family died because the rescuer hadn't trained?
Yeah.
That to me is even more sobering. Forget yourself. Think about the people that you adore. And that person didn't make it up that stairs, or they couldn't force that door, or they couldn't hold the tools long enough to cut that B-post and get your child out before they bled to death. These are very sobering things. So it's important that we do the operational training and the fitness training. And I'm almost 50 now, and I still, work out 4 or 5 times a week because just because I'm not wearing a uniform doesn't mean I'm not going to roll up on something and my strength might save someone, So to me, I'm going to carry that till I die. But in order for you to gain the benefits from exercising, you need rest and recovery because you heal, you grow when you sleep. Anyone's got into bodybuilding back in the day, they were always napping. That's when not only do we heal as far as the strength side, but also when you're training, when you're learning, you process learning when you are asleep, deep sleep, restorative sleep. So when you get told, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this would have heard this, I know I have, oh, it's always the fit guys that get hurt. Yes, and there's a physiological reason for that, and that is the problem. We're not even giving our men and women the environment that take their job seriously, that train hard to actually recover. So fast forward 10 years of sleepless nights, and you taking your training seriously, something will break. I had meniscus tears on both knees and a back injury. I did yoga, I did all kinds of stuff. But in the back injury, I was able to rehab with movement. The menisci, would that be the plural? They both
of all of them,
snipped, but that was it.
of both of them, you've gotten rid of both of them.
So there's parts of them there, but having them snipped. So, but that's my point: is even with hernia, whatever, if you're not able to, and the hernia might be,
It could have been there. It could have been anything. Yeah.
It could have been.
Yep.
But I mean, all the back injuries, knee injury, shoulder, everything else that you see people get over and over again, especially the people that do take their training seriously, it's a foregone conclusion. And that's yet another reason why we have to look at us as tactical athletes. No player in the NFL, NBA, Premier League would be told, yeah, you don't need to sleep tonight. You know what I mean? That is paramount in these professional sports. In fact, I'm just getting someone coming on very soon who works with sports, and we're going to talk about exactly that. But even from a performance standpoint, as well as the mental acuity and the longevity, just being able to stay fit and stay mobile and stay agile, which carries into the fireground. Because if you hurt your back halfway up a building, now you become the one they rescue, and the person you were supposed to be getting burns to death. So these are all part of the same conversation.
Yeah, that injury cycle is just vicious. If it happens on a scene, if it happens especially early on a scene, it's going to change that entire scene depending on the injury, where the person is, and could possibly injure more people trying to help that person. Because again, we're wearing over 100 pounds of gear in a IDLH in a superheated environment that's dark, and there's stairs that you've never been on, and there's 8 million different things going on. And that all plays into it. And I know we're talking about everything here, but we're still on the scheduling wise end of it too, because those days off, I don't think as a young firefighter, I didn't appreciate my days off. I went and worked EMS all night and partied on the other nights and did all kinds of things. But as I am not as close to 50 as you are, my friend, but I am valuing my sleep. And there are nights where it's 9 o'clock at night. I mean, I worked yesterday. I was on the car, and we did not have a crazy tour, at a very mellow tour. But it's still not sleep that I'm getting. Our neighbors were partying, and or someone in our neighborhood had an Easter party last night that I had the Mexican Dick Clark screaming till about 2 a.m. outside the window, where I was just like, this guy's nuts. I mean, we had a mutual aid fire at 3 a.m. and I had to bring another firefighter out to the engine there, and he was still going strong. So it's sleep, it's rest. It's not sleep like I'm going to get tonight. And I'm probably at my age and my, knowledge of myself at about 9:30, I'm going to be in bed tonight for sure.
Well, speaking of quality of sleep, this is the other thing that I think a lot of people don't understand. For you to get into true, deep, restorative sleep, you need to be able to completely relax. And when you're at a station where the tones are going to go off at any moment, and it could be an absolute bullshit, tummy ache, or it could be something catastrophic, you're not going to ever get into a deep restorative sleep in a fire station. You're not.
Ever.
And we now have some people that, find themselves there, and we're banging on the door. Hey, cat, wake up. We got to go. I've had one that I swear he was dead. He ended up waking up, but I gave him everything but a sternal rub to get that guy to wake up. But, we don't periodically get good sleep, which is why you have those. I never had a goose egg my whole career, but I had some nights where I didn't have to run a call. And I still felt like shit the next morning because you don't get a great night's sleep. And the analogy I use for people, I'm like, that aren't in the fire service, those big cymbals they have in the orchestras, the one in each hand, they smash them together. I'm like, imagine if someone stood by your bed and they said, I may or may not smash these in your ears tonight. How well would you sleep?
Yep. That's it.
You know what I mean?
That is
especially
literally
if you did it once, so you're not going to get into a deep sleep. So that's the thing, is the only place we're really going to sleep well is once we get home, if we don't have parties and kids and all that stuff keeping us awake too.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, right? So you come home from your shift, and listen, hopefully you can catch a nap, can catch that safety nap, but a lot of folks are doing, both parents work. My wife works, luckily the boys are older now, so they're pretty much doing their thing. But, you become the parent again, and you're the parent for that time off, whether it's 48 hours, 72 hours, 96 hours, whatever you have going on, and then you're right back into the fray. I think with the 48-96, that those days matter, definitely, because we do mutual swaps. So it's almost like when you do a mutual for someone on a full tour on the 4 platoon system, you do 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 24 off, 24 on again. by that third 24, I'm glad I'm back with my own crew. Let's put it that way. I'm not with the opposing shift that I don't really ever work with, but you're pretty spent by that point. But I think the realization and us talking about this, like you said, it's the same with fitness. The more that we talked about it and the more that people were putting stuff out there, like a John Spira or like an O2X, and the more all these things were coming to light, the more people started taking it seriously and making as many small changes as they could to make it better.
Yeah. And even, I mean, I remember this being a conversation between you, me, and John was the whole, do you work out in gear? Do you not? And even that's great dialogue, because now we're realizing, forget you ever saw a fire. My last department I finished up my career with protected Disney World, and I think I saw one fire the whole time, one legit fire. I mean, we went on calls, but, smoking mattress or something, but nothing we would call a fire. And so your gear was pretty damn clean. But now you think about PFAS and these forever chemicals that we've got in our gear, and now you're sweating that. So, I think sometimes you just have to, you cannot heat acclimatize without it. And, I know that there's some other things you can wear to kind of simulate it that maybe isn't your actual gear. And that's another great option too. But, I've lost my train of thought for a second. Sorry.
You need to move in your gear, right? For sure. I'm to the point where, like, to do a bottle breathe down, where we're doing some firefighter tasks that are getting our heart rate up, that are getting us moving, getting us acclimated to that extra heat and that feeling. That's a big deal. You need to keep that going every now and again. What we've learned in the past 10 years about the PFAS, like you said, and just... There's so many things that are involved now that weren't there when I started 20 years ago.
Well, even the phone, AFFF has got PFAS in as well. But then you go and, you cook and the Teflon in your pan has it. And I mean, we're surrounded by this stuff. So that's, again, the other part of the cancer conversation. There was this whole thing with the clean cab, and I had the Swedish guys on. Phenomenal. I love what they do. And I think a lot of it makes perfect sense. And I think people have disregarded that concept, thinking it's supposed to be some sterile surgical cab. Yeah. No, you want to get as much shit out as you can is what they're saying. And if you can't throw your gear on in a few seconds, if you do get a call, then maybe you need to practice putting your gear on. Because I've never seen anyone fly off a fire engine straight into the front door of a structure without taking time, getting their tools, doing a size up, being told, what the instructions are from the lieutenant or the captain. So this whole, clean cabs, stops, grabs, all that's bullshit. That's egomaniac, narcissist bullshit. I can tell you, being a tillerman on a truck in California where we couldn't wear our pack back there, that you have time to throw your fucking pack on. So that stuff nauseates me. But I think with the cancer conversation, what was missing was, wipe yourself down and clean your gear and all that stuff. It makes perfect sense. It's just obvious, totally obvious. Even your radio strap, something Dustin Hawkins talked about. If you had a leather radio strap, that's against your throat 24/7. Think about that too. And if you're looking for an alternative, safer straps is amazing. It's something that's the origin story of that. Just Dustin's wife's cancer, and he's a firefighter. Is you talk about understanding the why. I mean, that's an amazing product because he gets it, because it happened to him. But the resilience element of cancer. Why are we getting so much cancer? Well, because your immune system, if functioning well, can tolerate a lot of things, a lot of insults. But if our immune system starts getting beaten down, and again, sleep deprivation is a huge element of that, now we're more susceptible to the cancers, the heart disease, and even fucking COVID. Who are we going to put out in the front line? The most sleep-deprived people we have working.
In extra sleep deprivation because we were doing more calls and doing more.
Yeah.
So, FDIC is coming up in a couple of weeks, and I'm super excited to bring the Size Up by National Fire Radio to the show. It's always so cool to see literally all the firefighter stuff in one place. I always make it a point to swing by the Hikes footwear booth because 1, I love shoes. 2, I love shoes. And 3, they give out free backpacks the first 2 days of the show. And who doesn't love a good bag? Am I right? Plus, I hear they're coming out with a state-of-the-art structural boot that's going to be a game changer. I'm super excited to check those out and get one of those free backpacks. I hope to see you there.
Exactly. Until then we find a vaccine, then we fire them all for not taking it because they're selfish and murderers. That's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I mean, if you got to have that resilience, so with cancer or mental health, one of the huge elephants in the room that's never discussed on those two topics is how do we make the person healthier and stronger? And if we're not looking at sleep, we're missing a massive piece of the puzzle.
For sure. And that like prevention, just seeing all the changes that I've seen personally that we do in my department and everyone, I don't know if everyone is doing it because I've still been to firehouses without a clean air system for the rig, which we've had in my department since the 80s, which I was like, holy cow, we're well ahead of the game when I see someone without that now.
Do you have the hose?
Yeah, the connector hose.
My last place, I think they got rid of the hoses or they were pitched. But anyway, it was a box that sat on the ceiling instead. And it was terrible because all the diesel fumes have to go past everyone before they even get to this box.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
The bay doors have to be down. It was ridiculous. So I've had Plymouth vent for years.
Yeah, that's what we have.
To me, that makes makes the most sense. Stick a giant straw over the exhaust and blow it outside. So yeah, I mean, if you're not using that in 2023, then shame on you.
I mean, we hook it up on the way back in now. Like even that, it's like, what's the sense of getting any of as much as we can keep out of here? The better we can do is the easiest way to put it, because my station was built in 26, I think 1926 is what it says. So we're almost at 100 years. Our gear is in the bay still. We have an open stairwell. We have 2 open pole wells. I couldn't even imagine if they tried to close all of that stuff off. The cost factor, the time factor, whatever you could think of. Would it be a great idea? Sure. But we can do a bunch of other things to prevent that, like having the Plymouth vent system, washing your gear. I mean, I'm going to make myself look really bad here, but we had a little dryer fire 2 shifts ago. And when I was on the car yesterday, I took my helmet down to put it in the car. And when I was putting in the car, I went, wow, I should have washed my helmet after that last dryer fire. Cause it was, being shorter, I could be below most of the smoke plume that a lot of the other guys get to be in. But my helmet was messy and I never cleaned it yesterday. So my next shift when I go in, I gotta give that a good wipe just from that little simple thing. It's like you said, like a food on the stove call with the Teflon in it. My first 5-10 years on the job, we didn't wear air packs at food on the stove. So it was just smoke, right? Now we know that smoke is more toxic than a house fire.
Yeah, exactly. And you think about one of the biggest things I saw complacency in was dumpster fires. The one thing where all the shit is put in one container and is burning, and you're just going to stand on the outside with 1 3/4 inch lobbing water into it, while you're breathing all that crap, and it might explode in your face too. So that's what I saw a lot. The moment you were out of a structure, it was like, oh, we're fine. No, car fire, you're not fine. And even with the car fires, I mean, that's been, I don't know if I'm just completely misunderstanding car fires, but after 14 years, I go back to Fire Academy. Class A was wood and paper. Class B was oil-based. Well, you look at a car, apart from the steel frame, that's a Class B fire. The gas, the tires, the seats, and yet we never use foam on it. We just chase it around with water, and it burns and burns and burns, and we breathe more and more and more. So in Anaheim, they had the Class B pre-plumbed. And again, now obviously you've got to acknowledge the whole,
there's a whole different debacle in that story. Yes.
Yeah, PFAS in it. But,
yes.
A lot of the stuff that we were taught, it's like, why not just lob foam on a car fire? Just suffocate it, and then it all stops them. But number of car fires I've seen where they've used a whole tank, they've chased, gas down the street when it's on fire, going towards a drain. And, it's funny. We do some things we do because that's how we were shown to do it. And you take a step back and you go, why? Why am I not wearing a pack for a dumpster fire with all this shit that's in there? Why am I standing close to a car fire where no insurance company in the world is ever going to,
there's no saving anything in there.
It's written up. It's a trash fire. It's a trash fire with wheels. So unless you're trying to get someone out and hold back the flames, there's nothing to save. So there's nothing. That's why it makes me laugh. Oh, we had a kick-ass house fire in an Instagram post. I saw a tire on fire. Should I post that too? There's nothing. You didn't save anything.
It's all that was there. I don't understand with car fires.
In a car fire.
I thought with car fires, you're going to go, there's still folks out there not wearing their packs on car fires, and I can't fathom that. We've never in my department, it's always been a car fire, you have your pack on. A dumpster fire, you have your pack on.
As you should.
It's just one of those things that when you still see folks doing that, I'm like, who wants to breathe in what's burning in that car? Or who knows what's burning in that car? I mean, the amount of airbag explosions now, just in the time since you've been off the job, the airbags have quadrupled in cars. Every one of them is exploding while you're near it. I don't want that touching my face, much less breathing any of it in. But
well, and the electrics too.
Yeah, well, that's a whole different
all the
debacle
batteries
too.
and things that are burning now. So
yeah, thermal runaway, big topic in the fire service these days. I have not had one of those yet. I'm going to knock on everything, even though now I moved over to the truck. I think that's a full alarm for my department. If we have an electric vehicle, at least until we can stabilize the incident, we're going to send it everybody. Or at least I know if I'm on the car, I'm sending everybody if I hear that until we figure out what's happening. Because again, it's new and it's things we're learning about, but it's the same as going back to our main topic about us and the health and wellness of it all. You know, it was only, I don't know, maybe 3-5 years ago where we started doing more air monitoring after fires for CO. And just the other night, I still had my mask on and I'm like, all right, bring a CO meter up here. Let's check the apartment before we let inspections in, before we take our masks off. Which is another thing that you're just sucking stuff in when you don't even know it.
Yeah, and even CO, that's one gas.
Yeah.
That's all you're monitoring. All the other ones are like, they're not registering. So, because we were there with Anaheim, they did the same thing, and it was progressive then. We're talking, 15 years ago now, and they were doing that. But there should be a downgrade system where, all right, now, we're overhaul. Here's a filtration mask, not a full SCBA you got to carry around while you're pulling ceiling and pulling furniture out, but let's continue to filter the air. If you were in any sort of manufacturing plant with that kind of gas or particles floating around, you would be given those masks. But in the fire service, we're like, well, the fire's out.
We're good. We're good. Even though we teach everybody about off-gassing and you watch it happen in the fire tetrahedron, and we're still watching things in front of you off-gas, like, oh, look at that thing steaming. What's it giving off? Because we don't even know what that thing is anymore, right? When we go back to I put my mustache over my mouth and go in and fight the fire because I'm a man with hip boots and rode the back step. You could look over and be like, oh, that wooden couch is on fire right now. I mean, I don't even know what my couch is made of. I'm afraid to know what my couch is made of, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I think if I'm not mistaken, all furniture has PFAS in too, so you got all these things now. So, at some point, of course, you don't want to wear an SCB around for everything. Same way with, the whole COVID thing. There's time and a place for a well-fit mask, for example, and there's time where you just have to, get on with it. But we have to assume the worst in a lot of the ideal H environments that we work in these days, because my whole career was, I've 14 years and I started the academy 2002, 2003. So, pretty short career compared to a lot of people. But from day one, all that stuff was in the house. We were already in those fires where they burn X amount times faster now. So no one really, unless they've been on 40 plus years, can say, oh, back in my day, no. Like modern, it's like the EMS side as well. Like modern fire service, for most of us, has always had EMS. So stop beating your chest saying you're a firefighter and EMS is not for you. Like, no, you came to save lives, and it's the
That's
same
what you're
thing
doing,
with this. Yeah, we have to reverse engineer. We were always told to wear an SCBA, but now we have to take that incredible innovation and the things that those generations fought for to protect us, and we have to level up. Okay, I have this tool. When should I actually be using it? Should I be right on a fully involved car fire where the tires or the suspension or the batteries could blow up and I die for a metal frame? We have to kind of add what we got in the academy and what we got from our department and take a step back and go, how can we do this even better? Because like I said, as I transitioned out, I look back now and go, people ridicule that giant tarp that you can throw over a car fire.
Sure. Yeah.
But it worked. I haven't got one, but in the videos, if you and I could just grab a tarp, throw it over on the side of a freeway, and now it's out and we can get the hell out of that way of that traffic, which is what kills most of us anyway, I think that's a good thing. It's not going to look good on Instagram, but it works.
You don't have to pack hose again. You don't have to, like you said, I mean, the traffic accidents are just weekly now. that you're seeing police officers, firefighters, paramedics getting hit weekly, if not, I can't even imagine how many we don't know about. And then the death rate of that is just unreal. So the sooner you could get out, the better. We were just talking at work about those a shift or so ago, because we're not close to the border of New York, but the Port Authority for New York and New Jersey, they have emergency responders that are firefighter EMTs. They go into the tunnels when they have a car fire in the tunnel or an accident. And their plan now with those tarps is to go into the tunnel, throw the tarp over the car, hook the car with the tow truck that they have, and pull it right out of the tunnel. So that's two wins. One, they're not operating in the tunnel, so they can get out. And two, the rest of us can just drive to wherever we need to go, because we're more important than everyone else when you're trying to get through that tunnel to get to the city or to get back to New Jersey. So it's a win-win for everybody in that strategy.
Yeah. Well, you just kind of gave me a vision as well. I've shared some amazing videos of citizens that have come across a wreck and someone's trapped underneath, and they all get together and they pick up the car and they pull. You think about almost like the over safety that's also come along through our career. Like sometimes with those airbag evolutions, crib as you go and this and that, 4 big lads, men or women, sometimes you can just pick the side of that car up, pull that bloody person out and get on with it, So it's sometimes I look at it the other way and be like, we've overcomplicated it. If it's someone's completely entangled underneath and you got to buy time and, then I totally understand it. But they don't really teach, like sometimes you're just going to have to freaking do it.
You're just going to have to go.
Same way as the police officers that smash the car windows and drag someone out. They don't teach that in the fire academy. We get written up for that. If not fired, they get medals. But, so that's the other side, is sometimes I feel like we're so, I forget the word now, but, we got so much inbuilt safety that sometimes it gets in our own way and reduces our ability to be able to just simply act. We have to be safe. We don't want to kill ourselves or someone else in the process. But, do you really need, 12 belay lines and 15 people to go over the ridge? Or do you do like FDNY and sometimes you just have to fucking
tie a rope on a guy and throw him over the side of the building? I mean, that's it. And that's, I think what we've seen in that over safety, whichever way you want to call it, kind of idea, is just they're taking that human element out that you just can't. There's a reason why we have leaders in the fire service on the scene, because they have to make the call. And you want your organization to back them on that call. And it may not be 100% the way the book that someone wrote or the policy that someone wrote wanted it done. And it doesn't mean someone should do it again. And it may mean that person needs to be corrected, let's say, in a meeting or something or along those lines. But we have to keep that human element in mind where, like you said, if a police officer comes up to a car and it's on fire, they're going to break the glass and pull the person out. Now, the same time, we don't want that same police officer running around a house fire and breaking every window looking in for people, because they're just going to make the house fire worse. So it's that strange kind of, we're stuck in the middle here of how we're going to be. But if we keep the focus on our people again, that's what this is all about, right? You have to know your person, not just as a uniform, not just as a helmet. And it's just like the boss looking at one of their maybe unhealthier folks and trying to help them get better. Not tell them they're unhealthy, but give them the tools and the proper things they need to get better. So have you seen that change happening too, where more and more, even if it's not at a department level, but it's at a leadership level, the leader is saying, let's try this or let's do that to make ourselves healthier?
Have I seen that in my career?
And in your podcasting, just in your journey through Behind the Shield, with this change happening, are you seeing people adopt some of the things that you're talking about on the podcast?
Oh, I mean, yeah, because the people, my podcast is about the guests. So
let's go back. Maybe I have a better way to say this. So your podcast, you bring on guests that are talking about their expertise. And a lot of their expertise actually isn't in emergency service workers. It's just because again, we are all just people. The person behind the shield is just a regular person with a heart that beats and blood that circulates through their body, 2 kidneys, a spleen, all that kind of stuff like everyone else. So a lot of your guests are actually coming from the medical community or from the mental wellness community. And I guess that's more of what I'm looking at. Are you seeing people take that and realizing it's about a person and not necessarily the responder? Maybe that's a better way to put it.
No, exactly. Thank you for clarifying. But yeah, I think that's exactly it. So I started this whole thing just to be a library. Like I said, everything is free, everything is sitting out there. I've never discontinued any episodes or anything. So 755 episodes you have access from around the world. But the way I've kind of conducted the podcast is almost like a court case. So if you were going to prove to the world that sleep is important, that, holistic eating, food without chemicals and hormones, all that stuff is more beneficial to you, that moving is better than inactivity. All these basal things, a lot of us understand that are in the wellness world, but you actually want to make a case. So, for example, the sleep side, I've had, sleep experts from the Navy SEAL community, Doc Parsley, Alison Brager from the Army, Rachel Markwell from the Navy, Air Force, you name it, all different genres, different backgrounds, because that's just it. I wanted to go outside of our profession. What I kept seeing in the fire service, of course, there's going to be some people that are experts in all kinds of things, but as an organization, we would have, for example, oh, Pip, you want to be our fitness trainer? We're going to send you to a 2-day course and you can come back as our fitness guru. Now, I don't know any other profession where you go away for 2 days and you come back as a fucking expert. And it doesn't work in fitness. It doesn't work in mental health.
It doesn't work in anything.
Is it a good tool? Is it a good step? Absolutely. But the problem is we're like, right, check. Now we have a trainer. Check. Now we have a peer fitness, peer, they call it peer counselor.
You're right. Peer fitness. You're talking fitness, or you're talking like a
peer support. That's
peer support. Yeah,
peer support counselor. So we've checked the boxes: a fitness check, mental health check. I wanted to go to the real experts, the people that have dedicated their entire lives to this one topic: neuroscience, nutrition, fitness, psychology, and pull from them. Because especially when you create a free library, like, it doesn't cost you a penny. All you got to do is just hit play. And you can listen, you can share to your whole department, all these things. So that was really it. And yes, what I'm seeing now is more and more. I mean, the podcast's been downloaded almost 5 million times.
Wow.
So that tells me that people are getting a lot out of these guests, which is phenomenal. And it just, there's no better compliment than knowing that you've connected an expert with someone who needed to hear their work. And that's it, mic drop. So, but yeah, I am seeing a lot more discussion now on, on the sleep, on the mental health, and not just the mental health, like psychedelic retreats and all these kind of areas that we expand on. Mental health isn't, oh, you can go talk to someone, you'll feel better. There's an entire freaking toolbox, from equine therapy to EMDR to MDMA-led counseling to surfing and diving and, rucking and you name it. There's an absolute gamut of ways for you to find your best fit to start addressing your trauma, which will be a combination of a few probably. So by creating this immersive experience now with 750, now people can not only go, well, I think sleep's kind of bullshit, but I've just heard someone from the Army, the Navy, they've all said the same thing. Maybe actually I need to question the way I thought. And then, what I love as well is that now I'm able to send people episodes almost like homework, like I'm thinking about ketamine, but I'm kind of scared. All right,
listen to this.
There you go
682 right here. I got you. Ketamine.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what's really cool. So I'm kind of gone all over the place, but having all these great people now as a Encyclopedia Britannica for first responders, and being able to immerse them and basically allow them to find their own rabbit hole, their path to whatever it is they're looking for. I'm hearing and seeing over and over again that this is the information that we need, because we have some great people in our department, but the world is a much bigger than our city or our county. And once you have the humility to kind of ask people outside, it's amazing the great minds out there that have solutions to our problems.
And like you said, you can't possibly fix this one way. And I think, again, that's something else we're learning about this issue. Just about firefighting, that everybody is different and everyone's going to respond differently to different therapies, and they're going to respond differently to different traumas. And this call may affect me this way. This call may affect you that way. But when you have, like you said, literal Encyclopedia Britannica that you can go to of these experts and get a little more info, and a little more info. And then if I share that info with someone else, who knows? I may be listening to Behind the Shield because of the sleep issues, but someone else goes and they're like, oh no, I keep having these nightmares about this call, or I want to know more about a different kind of fitness or a different style of eating, which we didn't even talk about eating in this whole podcast and how important that is. Well, that'll be on the next one because we're getting close on time, and you dropped something in like the 10-minute mark here that I wrote down, and I want to go back to it because there is definitely a recruitment problem within the emergency services now too, police, fire, EMS, that did not exist. At least I didn't feel it existed 25 years ago when I was trying to get on this job. I felt like I was competing with everyone and their brother to get hired, and now it seems like we're almost begging people to take our job. And you mentioned about the folks doing their research, and how are we going to turn this back into that appealing job it was for us 20, 30 years ago?
So firstly, I think the Marion County, where I am now, that's what the chief said to me. Well, the problem, how can we do a D shift? We can't even get people now. And I've had so many people say this. I was like, well, have you ever asked why you can't get people now? If you look at most departments are struggling like that, you will see normally a revolving door element. So a lot of the bigger cities, counties, if they don't pay well, if they don't give the rest in recovery, you'll see them come. You'll spend 15 grand training them, equipping them. And then a year later, they'll get a probation, and then they'll piss off to some other department. Thanks for all the training. Thanks for the paramedic certification. I'm off now. So you have to ask, why are they leaving in the first place? And the thing is, if you went, just put it in another job. If you went there and there was 2 jobs you're going to go for, and one paid a decent wage and, they had good time off and some benefits, and the other one was a, factory job where you're going to work 60 hours a week in a dark closet in the corner, which one are you going to choose? The one that looks better, sure. Let's say it's the same exact job, so now you've got the purpose of being a firefighter and you want to serve. Beautiful. I want to serve. I wanted to be a firefighter. Oh shit. Look at those hours. Look at, all these things. Well, I can do this other job where I'll still be serving, and look at, I get to come home every night, and, I get all this time off. So it's not so much about, because that sounds almost like self-serving, but it's, people are realizing that they can make the world better in a number of ways, but because the fire service in a lot of departments has devolved, not all, there's some great people out there that are taking good care of their people, but a lot of them have devolved. And where I am now, Orange County, where I used to work, it's 56-hour work week, no Kelly day, paid like shit, understaffed. So you'd literally, and this is why I left that one, you'd get there, 7 a.m. and they'd be like, you can't go home. I was divorced. I was a single dad. Like, you can't tell me I can't go to my child. I'm the only person that he has. So I literally had to leave because they were mandatorying us so much. It was affecting my little boy. So, all these things, people are smart now. People are able to do the research. The same way as you can listen to Behind the Shield and hear the truth unfiltered from all these people. If you research the fire service now, it's not just the goldennuggets.com telling you how to ace your test. It's the real, the raw, the good, the bad, the ugly. You Google firefighter in your local town, the first thing that might pop up will be a number of suicides they've had.
Yeah.
So this is the problem. But there is a solution. It's just investing in your people. But like I said, you've got to play the long game. You can't think that you're going to fix this overnight. But at the same time, you can't procrastinate. You have to start today as well. But if you actually created a good work week, a good environment, you paid your firefighters a wage where they don't have to work 2 or 3 other fucking jobs just to pay their mortgage, you would turn this around completely. But we've misprioritized. Who was everyone screaming for 2 years ago? First responders, and then how quick they forget. A couple of years after 9/11, people start dying and the benefits start going away. A couple of year after COVID, people are firing first responders because they were too selfish to have the vaccine. So this is the culture that we're in. But the other thing that I see, apart from investing in the people and understanding that's going to save money long term, is you've got to keep that bar set high. I've asked so many leaders in the military and other areas. My observation was Anaheim, what I would consider the best department I work for, their bar was high, and they would lose 25% of each probationary class through attrition. If you couldn't make it, they had testing at 4, 8, and 12 months. If you couldn't make it, thank you so much. Don't take it personally. I'm sure other places will have you. You're just not right for us. I love that, because God, did you feel proud when you made it through that year? But if you lower that bar, not only are you increasing the chance that someone's going to make an epic mistake that will cost lives, but the lines go away, because people like you, people like me want to be challenged. You don't go to the, you heard on the street, that's the worst department, I'm going to go test for there. Oh, that one's really hard. You'll never get in there. Yeah. And they have this fitness standard. They require this. Oh, really? I'll fucking show you. I'm going to go get hired over there. That's what creates queues out the door. And so this is, I think, what I've seen. Anaheim, I tested against 1,000 certified firefighters, and they were also EMTs or paramedics. Ambulance experience, wildland experience. Their resumes were stacked. 1,000 of us for 30 spots. The last place I worked for, I don't know if they're hiring applications that are actually eligible get into double figures. It's pathetic. But their bar is so low, you have to dig a trench to find it. So I've seen it from both ends, you know, and that carries through to a fucking awful fire department outside of that. Whereas you set the bar high, you have great firefighters, great engineers, great captains, et cetera, et cetera. If you have zero expectations and it's 18 and a heartbeat, then some of those people are phenomenal, but some of those aren't. And we all know that usually the bad ones scurry up that ladder as fast as they can because they don't want to be on the fire ground. They don't want to be on a rescue. And now they're wearing bugles, So to me, you set that bar high, you invest in your people, because that's what you get paid for. I'm going to ask you to be a phenomenal firefighter and paramedic. And I'm going to pay you really well and give you the rest and recovery you need. But if you can't reach this bar, you're not the right fit for us. That is the mentality that we need to have. We need to support our men and women, but we also need to put that bar back. The number of special forces, special operations, incredible tactical athlete, war fighters that I had on the show, they say we hold police and fire to our standard. And you got to remember, when they're overseas, when whoever is you revere, when they're overseas deployed, who do you think is protecting their family? We are. So let that sink
totally in. Different way to even look at something like that. When you think about how many people hold them to such a higher level, and then you always have to ask yourself, am I holding myself to that level, right? Because the same as they are asking that question to themselves, how am I holding myself to this level? How is my department holding myself to this level? And again, even if your department is not holding you to that level, there's nothing that says you can't be doing it for yourself, that you can't be doing it for your crew. And it's not about doing it perfectly every single time. It's about doing it better every single time, at least in my estimation, that we can always be better. We could always be looking to be healthier, be fitter, be faster, be a student. A student of the job is probably my favorite saying after I became an officer. When I was a firefighter, I didn't quite go for it as much, I guess, even though I was always learning. But once I became an officer and started to look at every situation a lot differently, that student of, and it's almost what you've done with the podcast, is being a student of life, right? That's that Encyclopedia Britannica that you've put out there, is how to be a student of life. And if you can just take a dart and throw it at a number and listen to that episode that you hit, like throw the random number generator in, and now I'm going to listen to 428, I'm sure I could learn something about life from that one episode.
Well, yeah, two things. So firstly, another thing that we didn't touch on because it didn't come out, the number of people that have come on the show that have told their story. And so many people have just incredible stories. Some of them, that was kind of the reason they came on. And a lot of them, like a perfect example, Dan John, who's a strength and conditioning guru. He came on for the first 40 minutes of an hour and a half conversation. He talked about the multi-generational trauma in his family. His dad, I think, was World War II vet. His brother was a Vietnam vet. So I brought him on because we were going to talk lifting, and we ended up talking mental health. So that's the other thing, is, as you talked about, you may listen to this because you were going to learn about nutrition, but then it ends up going on some weird ways, and now you add that element too. So that storytelling element, I think, is so important that that's why you and I were talking before about the length of the conversation. Some of those short podcasts that are out there, and they hyper edit it to the point there's almost not a break between the question and the answer.
Just
they just splice and splice. you can spit out a bunch of facts, but you're not really connecting. Because like I listen to a lot of podcasts to prepare. I listen to other people's podcasts and try and credit the ones that I've heard people on, so that I can get a taste and get some ideas. I want to ask them this. They didn't kind of fully expand on that. So I love podcasts, and I love the longer form ones. But like an hour, like this one is a good length. But when you just do that, I just want the highlights. Give me the cliff notes. Yep. Well, you're not gonna connect with the cliff notes. Take the time, take an hour and a half or whatever, and listen to this person actually lead you through their journey. And it's amazing how much you retain when you're actually connecting in a story rather than a PowerPoint presentation or whatever. Which is why some of the mental health stories on here on my show have been so powerful. And I've watched lots of mental health presentations. This is how many we lose. This is how many were male. This is how what I mean. That doesn't change the way you think. But when you listen to someone who you admire incredibly, they were an NHL goalie, they were a Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 6, and they're actually in tears talking about what they went through, and you're like, fuck, I thought I was the one that was, thinking that way. I thought I was being a pussy, and now you realize that one of the most dangerous people on the planet went through the same shit as you do, because like you said, they have 2 kidneys, they have a spleen, they're just people like you. So I think that the other thing I was going to say something else, but already forgotten now. But
but those, no, you're right. Those stories hit so differently, and it's not. Again, it's that student of life where hearing an expert talk for a while is great. Where hearing someone tell that story to get you emotionally invested, and like you said with Dan George, was it?
Dan John.
Like you didn't even know the episode was going to go that way. And I'm sure everyone tuning in was like, I can't wait to hear what he has to say about strength and conditioning. And here you are talking about his family life and what we now know to be his PTSD or anything related to that topic, but you hear those stories, and it's just one more way to kind of get the message out there. And you've been doing an amazing job with that. And we're floating around my hour mark where, the boss, Jeremy, gets a little, I can go as long as I want to, but I think and now he gets a little shaky when they're over an hour or so. So I got to keep him happy. It's only the second episode back. But I think a great way to kind of end this one is because the folks that listen to this have 755 episodes of hearing you interview these folks and hearing your part of their story. And I know that has definitely impacted you for the positive. So I can't thank you enough for that, for sure. But if you just want to we can go over it. Jeremy would just be mad at me. But if you even want to talk about that real quick and how it affected you hearing all these stories or hearing even just one story, feel free, man. It's a good way to finish this, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we'll back to what you said about the perpetual student. That's exactly how I look at this. That's why I always call myself a conduit. Have I learned a lot? Do I have some value in my 14 years as a firefighter and my, strength and conditioning, all that stuff? Absolutely. But am I an expert? Absolutely not. Which is why, people say, oh, do you do talks? Do you visit departments? I'm like, no, because I'm not an expert in anything. That's why I have a podcast. You can listen to this for free. It won't cost you a penny. But yes, when you listen to some of these stories, it's I have a lot of people I know that are either in like the peer support side, or they have a podcast, or whatever realm, but they're listening to these stories. There's a part of this where it's very healing, and I've never had to go to counseling specifically. I think I'm a lot more holistic in what works for me. The time by the ocean, nature, walking my dog, meditation, some other things like that work really well. And so, but I think these conversations do too as well. I think it is counseling, honestly. I'm listening to all these people and getting to interact and share some of my stories if it's pertinent and makes sense at that point. But you do have to be careful, because absolutely it also takes a piece of you. And I wrote a book a couple of years called One More Light. And I used the analogy from the Green Mile, where he's taking on everyone else's pain, Michael Clark Duncan's character. And you do have to offload that, or it will kill you. Now, it can be someone else's pain from people that you run on wearing the uniform. It can be someone else's pain if you're constantly a shoulder for one of your friends who's going through it. So that's that self-care as well. You have to make sure that you take care of yourself, because it's a very overused analogy, but it fits the whole oxygen mask on a plane. You got to apply it to yourself before you can help someone else. Or I guess in a fire service, you got to mask up to go get someone else that's gone down. So that is, so yes and yes. Yes, it's incredibly healing, but yes, you have to watch out, especially when you listen to very, very heartbreaking stories. Some people's lives, early life especially, can be pretty hard to listen to. But it did allow me, I'll just kind of do a quick shameless plug, because the podcast is completely free, but I did write the book, and the whole point was kind of like what I learned. So it looks like a biography. It's not. I've just used stories from my life, but each chapter is a takeaway. So it might be mental health, it might be sleep, it might be injury or addiction, or strength and conditioning, whatever it is. But I use the power of story to align with the experts and what I've learned from them, so that by the time people finish the book, hopefully they'll think about a lot of things in a different way. So that book is called One More Light, Life, Death, and Humanity Through the Eyes of a Firefighter.
And I have read it, and it is worth the read for sure. And I had it written on my little notes thing with everything I wanted to talk about today with you that we never got to. So I'm glad you did your shameless plug, because I didn't get that far. And it was funny because I was looking for it before we recorded today. And I'm like, where is it? And I have a decent amount of books. I do like to read. I'm like, where is this book? I'm like, I know I read this. This book, it's got to be here. It's somewhere. My engine driver has it, because after I finished it, I gave it to him, because I was like, bro, you're going to like this one. This is a good one for you. So I got to get it back from Juan at some point, or maybe not. Maybe I'll just let him keep it, because we do share books like that when you have that. But definitely check out Behind the Shield podcast on every podcast forum you could think of. You're pretty much on right now. I can only imagine. They're everywhere. Probably ones I've never heard of. So if you do a Google of Behind the Shield, you'll find that. And the website is jamesgeering.com, correct?
It is. It's funny, though. If you Google Firefighter Podcast, even with 5 million downloads, it doesn't show up on any of them. So I've got my
SEO. We're going to have an SEO talk after we stop recording. Exactly. I know a little bit about SEO. But James, man, this has been great catching up with you. Thank you so much for coming on this episode with me of The Size Up by National Fire Radio.
National Fire Radio.